also in the Yoga Sutras. Patanjali Muni says that that's the mantra one should chant, meditate upon for elevation. Thus Chaitanya Mahaprabhu criticized Shankaracharya's Shariraka Bhasha as imaginary, and he pointed out hundreds of faults in it. To defend Shankaracharya, however, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya presented unlimited opposition. The Bhattacharya presented various types of false arguments with pseudo-logic and tried to defeat his opponent in many ways. However, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu refuted all these arguments and established his own conviction. The word vitanda indicates that a debater, not touching the main point or establishing his own point, simply tries to refute the other person's argument. When one does not touch the direct meaning but tries to divert attention by misinterpretation, he engages in chala. The word nigraha also means always trying to refute the argument of the other party. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu continued, the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the central point of all relationships. Acting in devotional service to Him is one's real occupation, and the attainment of love of Godhead is the ultimate goal of life. These three subject matters are described in the Vedic literature. Purport. In the Bhagavad Gita 15:15, Lord Krishna confirms this statement. Vedaisya sarvyar ahameva vedya. The actual purpose in reading the Vedas is to learn how to become a devotee of the Supreme Lord. The Lord Himself advises, Manmana pavamad bhakta madhyaji mam namaskuru. Therefore, after studying the Vedas, one must then execute devotional service by thinking always of the Supreme Lord, Manmana, becoming His devotee, worshipping Him, and always offering Him obeisances. This is called Vishnu Aradhana, and it is the supreme occupational duty of all human beings. It is properly discharged in the Varnashrama Dharma system, which divides society into Brahmacharya, Grihastha, Vanaprastha, and Sannyas, and Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Shudra. This is the whole scheme of Vedic civilization. However, this institution is very difficult to establish in this age. Therefore, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu advises that we not worry about the Vedic system of Varnashram Dharma. Rather, we should take directly to the chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra and simply hear about the Supreme Personality of Godhead from pure devotees. This is the process recommended by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and this is the purpose for studying the Vedas. If one tries to explain the Vedic literature in a different way, he is indulging in imagination. Any interpretation of the Vedic self-evident Vedic version is simply imaginary. When a conditioned soul is purified, he is called a devotee. A devotee has his relationship only with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and his only occupational duty is to execute devotional service to satisfy the Lord. This service is rendered through the Lord's representative, the spiritual master. Yasya Devi Para Bhaktir Yata Devi Tata Guru. When the devotee executes devotional service properly, he attains the highest perfection of life, love of Godhead. Savaipum Samparo Dharmo Yato Bhaktiradoksaje. The ultimate goal of understanding the Vedas is to be elevated to the platform of rendering loving service to the Lord. The Mayavadi philosophers, however, consider the central point of relationship to be the impersonal Brahman, the function of the living entity to be the acquisition of knowledge of Brahman, resulting in detachment from material activity, and the ultimate goal of life to be liberation or merging into the existence of the Supreme. All of this, however, is simply due to the imagination of the conditioned soul. It simply opposes him to material activities. One should always remember that all Vedic literatures are self-evident. No one is allowed to interpret the Vedic verses. If one does so, his indulgence he indulges in imagination, and that has no value. 180. Actually, there is no fault on the part of Shankaracharya. He simply carried out the order of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He had to imagine some kind of interpretation, and therefore he presented a kind of Vedic literature that is full of atheism. Addressing, this is text number 181. Addressing Lord Shiva, the Supreme Personality of Godhead said, "Please make the general populace averse to me by imagining your own interpretation of the Vedas. Also cover me in such a way that people will take more interest in advancing material civilization just to propagate a population bereft of spiritual knowledge." This is a quotation from the Padma Purana, Uttarakhanda 62:31. Lord Shiva informed Goddess Durga, the superintendent of the material world, "In the age of Kali, I take the form of a Brahmana and explain the Vedas through false scriptures in an atheistic way, similar to Buddhist philosophy." Purport: the word Brahmana Murtina in this verse refers to the founder of Mayavad philosophy, Shankaracharya, who was born in the Malapara district of southern India. Mayavad philosophy states that the Supreme Lord, the living entities, and the cosmic manifestation are all transformations of illusory energy. To support this atheistic theory, the Mayavadis cite false scriptures, which make people bereft of transcendental knowledge and addicted to fruitive activities and mental speculation. This verse is a quotation from the Padma Purana, Uttarakhanda. Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya became very much astonished upon hearing this. He became stunned and said nothing. Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu then told them, "Do not be astonished. Actually, devotional service unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the highest perfection of human society. Even the self-satisfied sages perform devotional service to the Supreme Lord. Such are the transcendental qualities of the Lord. They are full of inconceivable spiritual potency. Atmaramash Munayo Nigranta Apyarukrame Kurvantya Haitu Kim Bhaktim Ita Bhuta Gunam. Somebody asked yesterday why they discussed the Aparama verse. But at least from the context here, it came up naturally. I responded yesterday that it's a very important verse, but it's in the conversation where Chaitanya brought it up. Those who are self-satisfied and unattracted by external material desires are also attracted to the loving service of Sri Krishna, whose qualities are transcendental and his activities are wonderful. Hari, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is called Krishna because he has such transcendently attractive features. This is the famous Atmarama verse, 1:7-10. After hearing the Atmarama verse, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya addressed Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, "My dear sir, please explain this verse." Who asked the question yesterday? Sri Antariksha. Well, it's not likely that he's watching now, is it? Because you're not online? After hearing the Atmarama verse, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya addressed Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, "My dear sir, please explain this verse. I have a great desire to hear your explanation of it." The Lord replied, "First let me hear your explanation. After that I shall try to explain what little I know." Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya then began to explain the Atmarama verse, and according to the principles of logic, he put forward various propositions. I like this point here. He says, Jeba Kichu Jani. Kichu means like some little thing. It's okay, I can say some little thing that I know. So, humble. And it's also one of the principles we talked about yesterday, preaching. If you preface what you tell people with, "as you know better than I," then they tend to be more receptive. Instead of just telling them something. The Bhattacharya explained the Atmarama verse in 9 different ways on the basis of scripture. After hearing his explanation, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, smiling a little, began to speak. The Atmarama verse was discussed at Naimisharanya at a meeting of many great sages headed by Shonaka Rishi. They questioned Srila Sutta Goswami, who presided at the meeting, about why Srila Shukadeva Goswami, a Paramahamsa, already in the transcendental position, was attracted to a discussion of the qualities of Krishna. In other words, they wanted to know why Sri Shukadeva Goswami engaged in the study of Srimad Bhagavatam. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, "My dear Bhattacharya, you are exactly like Brihaspati, the priest of the heavenly kingdom. Indeed, no one within this world has the power to explain the scriptures in such a way. My dear Bhattacharya, you have certainly explained this verse by the prowess of your vast learning. But you should know that besides this scholarly explanation, there's another purport to this verse." Upon the request of Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu began to explain the verse without touching upon the 9 explanations given by the Bhattacharya. There are 11 words in the Atmarama verse, and Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu explained each word one after another. The words in the Atmarama verse are Atmarama cha munaya nigranta api arukrame kurvanti ahaitukim bhaktim idam puta gana and hari. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu took each word specifically and combined it with the word Atmarama. He then explained the word Atmarama in 18 different ways. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said the Supreme Personality of Godhead, his different potencies, and the transcendental qualities all have inconceivable prowess. It is not possible to explain them fully. These 3 items attract the mind of a perfect student, engage in spiritual activities, and overcome all other processes of spiritual activity. Purport: spiritual activities other than bhakti yoga are divided into 3 categories. Speculative activity conducted by the Jnana Sampradaya, learned scholars. Fruitive activity conducted by the general populace, according to the Vedic regulations. And the activities of transcendentalists not engaged in devotional service. There are many different branches of these categories, but the Supreme Personality of Godhead, by his inconceivable potencies and transcendental qualities, attracts the mind of the student engaged in the activities of karma, jnana, yoga, and so forth. The Supreme Lord is full of inconceivable potencies, which are related to his person, his energies, and his transcendental qualities. All of these are very attractive to the serious student. Consequently, the Lord is known as Krishna, the all-attractive one. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu explained the meaning of the verse by giving evidence concerning Shukadeva Goswami and the 4 rishis, Sanak, Sanat Kumar, Sanatana, and Sanandana. Thus the Lord gave various meanings and explanations. Purport: that Krishna is all attractive is verified by the activities of the 4 rishis and Shukadeva Goswami. All of them were liberated persons, yet they were attracted by the qualities and pastimes of the Lord. It is therefore said, Mukta api lilaya vigraham kritva bhagavantam bhajante. Even liberated persons are attracted by the pastimes of Lord Krishna and thus engage in devotional service. From the very beginning of their lives, Shukadeva Goswami and the 4 Kumaras, known as Chatusana, were liberated and self-realized on the Brahman platform. Nonetheless, they were attracted by the qualities of Krishna and they engaged in his service. The 4 Kumaras were attracted by the aroma of the flowers offered at the lotus feet of Krishna, and in this way they became devotees. Shukadeva Goswami heard Srimad Bhagavatam by the mercy of his father, Vyasadeva, and he was consequently attracted to Krishna and became a great devotee. The conclusion is that the transcendental bliss experienced in the service of the Lord must be superior to Brahmananda, the bliss derived from realizing the impersonal Brahman. Upon hearing Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's explanation of the Atmarama verse, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya was struck with wonder. He then understood Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to be Krishna in person, and he thus condemned himself in the following words. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is certainly Lord Krishna himself, because I could not understand him and was very proud of my own learning. I have committed many offenses. When Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya denounced himself as an offender and took shelter of the Lord desired to show him mercy. To show him mercy, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu allowed him to see his Vishnu form. Thus he immediately assumed 4 hands. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu first showed him the 4-handed form and then appeared before him in his original form of Krishna, with a blackish complexion and a flute to his lips. When Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya saw the form of Lord Krishna manifested in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he immediately fell down flat to offer him obeisances. Then he stood up with folded hands and began to offer prayers. By the mercy of the Lord, all truths were revealed to Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, and he could understand the importance of chanting the holy name and distributing love of Godhead everywhere. Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya composed 100 verses in a very short time. Indeed, not even Brihaspati, the priest of the heavenly planets, can compose verses as quickly. Purport: the name of the book of 100 beautiful verses composed by Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya is Sushloka Shataka. After hearing the 100 verses, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu happily embraced Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, who was immediately overwhelmed in ecstatic love of Godhead and fell unconscious. Out of ecstatic love of God, the Bhattacharya shed tears and his body was stunned. He exhibited an ecstatic mood and he perspired, shook, and trembled. He sometimes danced, sometimes chanted, sometimes cried, and sometimes fell down to touch the lotus feet of the Lord. While Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya was in this ecstasy, Gopinathacharya was very pleased. The associates of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu all laughed to see the Bhattacharya dance so. So there's some indication here of Gopinathacharya being there when Mahaprabhu was giving his instructions to Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. Because here in context, he's watching the transformation. But for corroboration, in the Navadvita Mahatmya, it's mentioned that he listened, and because he heard all this from Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, in his next life, he became qualified as Baladev Vidyabhushan. He became Baladev Vidyabhushan to manifest the Govinda Bhashya. And it came from this hearing of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu directly to refute Mayavad philosophy. Gopinathacharya told Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, "Sir, you have brought all this upon Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya." Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu replied, "You are a devotee. Because of your association, Lord Jagannath has shown him mercy." After this, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu pacified the Bhattacharya, and when he was quieted, he offered many prayers to the Lord. Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya said, "My dear sir, you have delivered the entire world, but that is not a very great task. However, you have also delivered me, and that is certainly the work of wonderful prayer powers. I had become dull-headed due to reading too many books on logic. Consequently, I had become like an iron bar. Nonetheless, you have melted me, and therefore your influence is very great." After hearing prayers offered by Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu returned to his residence, and the Bhattacharya, through Gopinathacharya, induced the Lord to accept lunch there. Early the following morning, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu went to see Lord Jagannath in the temple, and he saw the Lord rise from his bed. The priest there presented him with garlands and prasadam that had been offered to Lord Jagannath. This pleased Chaitanya Mahaprabhu very much. Carefully tying the prasadam and garlands in a cloth, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu hastened to the house of Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. Arundaya kale hoy prabhura agama she kale Bhattacharya hoy jagarana. Arising from bed, he arrived at the Bhattacharya's house a little before sunrise, just when the Bhattacharya was arising from bed. As Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya rose from bed, he distinctly chanted, "Krishna, Krishna." Lord Chaitanya was very pleased to hear him chant the holy name of Krishna. The Bhattacharya noticed Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu outside, and with great haste he went to him and offered prayers unto his lotus feet. The Bhattacharya offered a carpet for the Lord to sit upon, and both of them sat there. Then Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu opened the prasadam and placed it in the hands of Bhattacharya. At that time, the Bhattacharya had not even washed his mouth, nor had he taken his bath or finished his morning duties. Nonetheless, he was very pleased to receive the prasadam of Lord Jagannath. By the mercy of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, all the dullness in the mind of Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya was eradicated. After reciting the following two verses, he ate the prasadam offered to him. Shuksham prayushitam bhapi nitam vaduradeshata prapti matrena bhoktavyam natrakala vicharana. The Bhattacharya said, one should eat the Mahaprasadam of the Lord immediately upon receiving it, even though it is dried up, stale, or brought from a distant country. One should consider neither time nor place. Nadesha niyamastatra, nakala niyamastata, praptamanam drutam shrishter, bhoktaram harir abravid. The prasadam of Lord Krishna is to be eaten by gentlemen as soon as it is received. There should be no hesitation. There are no regulative principles concerning time and place. This is the order of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Hridayānanda Mahārāja talks about how in LA once there was a Prabhupada would go on a morning walk every day, and some of the devotees would go with him. It was a Monday, and after Sunday feast, which was a huge deal back then, it was the only time of the week devotees had any sense gratification. And sometimes, the next morning you could see it was the effects of the Sunday program. Sometimes there were plates still left around, like prasadam. So when they came back from the morning walk, and they were walking into the building, Prabhupada saw a really big plate of prasadam sitting on a ledge. And they stopped, he looked at Hridayānanda Mahārāja and he goes, "Eat that." And he walked on, and Hridayānanda Mahārāja said he took it, sat down immediately in that same place and just took the whole thing. Eat that. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was very pleased to see this. He became ecstatic in love of Godhead and embraced Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. The Lord and the servant embraced each other and began to dance. Simply by touching each other, they became ecstatic. As they danced and embraced, spiritual symptoms manifested in their bodies. They perspired, trembled, and shed tears, and the Lord began to speak in his ecstasy. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, "Today I have conquered the three worlds very easily. Today I have ascended to the spiritual world." Purport. The goal of human perfection is stated here in brief. One has to surpass all the planetary systems of the material universe, pierce through the covering of the universe, and reach the spiritual world, known as Vaikuntha Loka. The Vaikuntha Lokas are variegated spiritual planets situated in the Lord's impersonal bodily effulgence, known as the Brahmajyoti. One may aspire to elevate himself to a heavenly planet within the material world, such as the moon, the sun, or Venus, but if one is spiritually advanced in Krishna consciousness, he does not wish to remain within the material universe, even in a higher planetary system. Rather, he prefers to penetrate the covering of the universe and attain the spiritual world. He can then be situated in one of the Vaikuntha planets there. However, the devotees under the guidance of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu aspire to reach the topmost spiritual planet known as Goloka Vrindavan, the residence of Lord Sri Krishna and his eternal associates. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu continued, I think that today all my desires have been fulfilled because I see that Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya has acquired faith in the Mahaprasadam of Lord Jagannath. Indeed, today you have undoubtedly taken shelter of the lotus feet of Krishna, and Krishna, without reservation, has become very merciful towards you. My dear Bhattacharya, today you have been released from material bondage in the bodily conception of life. You have cut to pieces the shackles of the illusory energy. Today your mind has become fit to take shelter of the lotus feet of Krishna, because surpassing the Vedic regulative principles, you have eaten the remnants of food offered to the Lord. When a person takes shelter of the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead without reservation, the unlimited merciful Lord bestows his causeless mercy upon him. Thus he can pass over the insurmountable ocean of nations. Those whose intelligence is fixed in the bodily conception, who think, I am this body, are fit food for dogs and jackals. The Supreme Lord never bestows his mercy upon such people. Purport. The Supreme Lord never bestows his benediction upon those fixed in the bodily conception. As Krishna clearly states in Bhagavad Gita 18:66, Sarva-dharma parityaja mamekam sharanam braja tvam sarva papebhyo mokshaishami masuchaha. Abandon all varieties of religion and just surrender unto me. I shall deliver you from all sinful reactions. Do not fear. The verse that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu quoted, Srimad Bhagavatam 2:742, explains the meaning of Sri Krishna's statement. Krishna bestowed his causeless mercy upon Arjuna just to get him out of the bodily conception. This was done at the very beginning of the second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, 2:13, where Krishna says, Dehi nosmin yatha dehe komaram yovanam jura. In this body there is an owner, and one should not consider the body to be the self. This is the first instruction to be assimilated by a devotee. If one is under the bodily conception, he is unable to realize his true identity and engage in the loving devotional service of the Lord. Unless one comes to the transcendental position, he cannot expect the causeless mercy of the Supreme Lord, nor can he cross over the vast ocean of material nations. Lord Krishna confirms this in the Bhagavad Gita 7:14, Mame veye prapadyante mayam etam tarantite. Without surrendering unto the lotus feet of Krishna, one cannot expect release from the clutches of Maya, the illusory energy. According to Srimad Bhagavatam 10.2.32, Mayavadi sannyasis who falsely think of themselves as liberated from the clutches of Maya are called vimuktamanina. Actually, they are not liberated, but they think that they have become liberated and have become Narayan himself. Although they have apparently realized that they are not the material body, but spirit soul, they nonetheless neglect the duty of the spirit soul, which is to render service to the Supreme Soul. Therefore, their intelligence remains unsanctified. Unless one's intelligence is sanctified, one cannot apply it to understanding devotional service. Devotional service begins when the mind, intelligence, and ego are completely purified. Mayavadi sannyasis do not purify their intelligence, mind, and ego, and consequently they cannot engage in the service of the Lord or expect the causeless mercy of the Lord. Although they rise to a very high position by executing severe austerities and penances, they still hover in the material world without the benediction of the lotus feet of the Lord. Sometimes they rise to the Brahman effulgence, but because their minds are not completely purified, they must remain return, to material existence. The karmis are fully under the bodily conception of life, and the jnanis, although theoretically understanding that they are not the body, also have no information about the lotus feet of the Lord because they overly stress impersonalism. Consequently, both karmis and jnanis are unfit for receiving the mercy of the Lord and becoming devotees. Narottam Das Thakur therefore says, Karma kanda jnana kanda kevala vishera bhanda, kevala vishera bhanda. Those who have taken to the process of karma kanda, fruit of activity, and jnana kanda, speculation on the science of transcendence, have simply eaten from poisoned pots. They are condemned to remain in material existence, life after life, until they take shelter of the lotus feet of Krishna. This is confirmed in Srimad Bhagavatam 7:19. Bahunam jamanamante jnanamama prapadyate vasudeva sarvamiti samahatma sudhura. After many births and deaths, he who is actually in knowledge surrenders unto me, knowing me to be the cause of all causes and all that is. Such a great soul is very rare. We'll take a few reflections or comments. Ekachar Kapran, then Mahendra Prabhu, then Karavind.
To Srimad Shariksha Prabhu's question about 18 verses 61 explanations, I found it later on in the Madhya Lila, chapter 24. Sanatana Goswami asked Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, I heard that previously at the home of Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya you explained the Atmarama verse in 18 ways. I've heard this wonderful story and I'm very inquisitive to hear your explanation again. If you would kindly repeat it, I'd be very pleased. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, I do not recall what I spoke in that connection, but if something comes to my mind due to association with you, I shall explain it. And then he went on to explain it in 61 ways. And I was also appreciating how Chaitanya Mahaprabhu enjoys the fighting propensity, like how Shringadev enjoyed the fight with Hiranyakashipu to glorify Prahlad. Similarly here, he enjoyed the debate with Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, and then he's glorifying Gopinath Acharya at the end of it.
Thank you. We alluded to that it was two different things that you brought it into full focus. And this also has the same element we mentioned before, that Mahaprabhu tends to preface what he says with a humble statement. What did he say?
I do not recall what I spoke in that connection, but if something comes to my mind due to association with you, I shall explain it.
It's such a graceful way of dealing with the world. Plus, he's a Supreme Personality guided. He's also sannyasi, the head of the Varnashram. He's also obviously the leader of all his devotees, and he's so gentle the way he speaks to his devotees.
There's another verse that's just like that after. Generally by myself I cannot give an explanation, but by the strength of your association something may manifest itself.
It's also indicative of the power of association itself, that when we're in a group, Svananta Smarayantascha, Mita means together, Gauda Hadam Harim, then it's especially helpful and pleasing. Thank you. Well done. Mahendra.
I was struck by the mittens of Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, how dull was he. He became so dull-headed because of reading too much books on logic. And it's amazing how you can be so learned and understand everything, and know all the shastras. You can miss such an obvious deficiencies in Mahārāja Bhashya. It's so subtle. It covers you, and even if you know so much, you still can't see the obvious. And therefore Mahaprabhu says, Mahārāja Bhashya, Sarvadash, everything is destroyed, everything is spoiled. And that verse, when we went through, I remember that story later on, when Bhagavan Acharya's brother came just graduated in Varanasi. And Bhattacharya, who was a friend with Sarvabhauma, said, let's go and hear from him. He's giving classes. And Sarvabhauma, Sarvabhauma says, are you mad? Why would you want to listen to Mahārāja? And he argued back and says, what's the harm? He's my brother. And if we're strong, with staunch faith, we have staunch faith in Krishna, we are devotees, that will not influence us. And Sarvabhauma said, even if that's so, even if we're not influenced devotees, if they hear, their hearts are broken.
Their what?
Hearts, their mind and hearts are broken.
Broken.
They just feel so much pain to hear that the jiva is the same as the Supreme Lord. So it's just they become, they're heartbroken. Just completely.
We should be careful of our association. Definitely not associate with others. Okay, Arvind.
And you were seeing that how the transformation of Sarvabhauma was happening, and then when he finally took the prasadam in the morning, when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came, that time Chaitanya Mahaprabhu declared that now you have developed the faith in the prasadam, and I was just remembering that our discussion we had like a few days back, that though he was the head of, how he can be the head of the Jagannath temple or Pandit, and then I'm sure he has taken prasadam before, but Chaitanya Mahaprabhu specifically tells that you have now developed the faith in the prasadam. So it's a very subtle things that people may be doing the things, but that faith, that's what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu told, that came now, and that you told now your life is successful after developing that faith. And one question I had in the same regard is that sometime a person he brought a prasadam from Tirupati, and it happened to be Ekadasi day, and then he told this same verse that na desa nivastata na kalas nivastata, like there is no time and place is considered. Whenever the prasadam comes, then you should immediately honor. So I'm not sure like how this verse applies to the situation when this Ekadasi and prasadam comes like from Tirupati. It's like a little moral dilemma, if you can kindly clarify.
Well, we know from the way Ambarish Maharaj equivocated, because there are many times in which, not just in that circumstance, we're faced with an intractable situation where someone quotes some shastra and says, okay, you have to do this now, and then just like Ambarish Maharaj, he was conducting a vow. So he found a way to do both things. He drank water, and that broke the fast. Technically, for dry fasting, then you drink water, it breaks the fast, but water actually doesn't break the fast. And so, in situations like this, it's best to appease the mind of the person, even if you're following a vow, by giving some concession, not just saying no. If you can take it, take darshan, honor it, and then take it when it's okay. Yes.
Thank you very much.
Hridayānanda Pandit gives that story in Prema Vivarta of the exactly same situation. They were fasting like Kadashiyas. They did during Mahaprabhu's time, and they were doing kirtan. So devotees arrived and brought Jagannath Prasad. And then this dilemma came, oh, what do we do? Because you have to honor, but you have to fast. So two injunctions, which is more important. And Mahaprabhu said, yes, we'll honor the Prasad. He went and offered a vaisesika. And we said, but we'll take it tomorrow. And then there was a whole big section how devotees should not eat on Ekadashi. And if they eat at all, then it should be a substitute, anukalpa, like fruits or something.
Thank you. That's helpful. And it's also being gracious when somebody brings you something, not to say. But I've seen too, around some senior members of the Gaudiya Math, that there was a senior devotee in the Gaudiya Math that was one of Prabhupada's godbrothers, Bhakti Vaibhav Puri Maharaj, and they just happened to get to know him. And just picked up a little bit of their culture, because he would always insist everybody take prasadam. Anybody would come to just see him, they'd take prasad. And I had a godbrother with me, and he told, take prasad now. And he said, no, you can't take now. And later, one of the senior disciples of Puri Maharaj said, well, you never say no, you just say yes, but then you don't do it. And it goes to this point of being very, being graceful in the circumstance. You can always make up for it later, but don't be a boor and be brutish, but be sensitive to the fact that people offer you something. There was also a principle on Sankirtan I learned years ago, when people offer something that may be substandard. They don't know, and they still take it. But we have to find out how to keep the channels open. You had a point? I thought you raised your hand, or maybe that was last session. I'm getting loopy.
I just wanted just to say how amazing this is, and these are surrounding by movies of Lord Chaitanya, and we're in the dawn, and we're hearing, Chaitanya Charitamrita. It's just like ecstatic, and you hear about like how the mercy of Chaitanya and Krishna is very rare, and I'm like, how did I end up in this position? So this is like really amazing something.
Let's look to the outside people's party. Yes, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Yes.
I can understand that here in India, because of the Vedic culture, because of Sarvabhauma's teaching, this Mayavad philosophy is very prevalent. I've been told by local Indian devotees that it's practically running in their veins, this Mayavad philosophy. And Srila Prabhupada certainly writes long, elaborate purports explaining what is Mayavad philosophy and the philosophy of it. But I'm just wondering for myself, like I've tried to read this purport several times, and I find it really tedious and quite painful to the brain actually to comprehend these different kinds of philosophies which are false anyway. So I'm just wondering, especially for us in the West, what's the relevance in our movement? What's the relevance of all this Mayavad philosophy for us?
Well, first of all, as Mukarvin quoted earlier, Siddhanta Bole Chitanakara Alash, Iha Hote Krishna Lage Sudrit Manash. This verse comes in the Adi Lila, and it's spoken by Kaviraj Goswami. He's presenting, it's not about Mayavad, but it's about differences of opinion about the original personality of Godhead. So some people may say Brahmanadev, some people may say something else. He said all these can be entertained and discussed. And then he gives his first Siddhanta Bole Chitanaka Alash. Alash means to be lazy. And he said, Siddhanta, you should discuss the truth. Siddhanta means to be very precise about what something is. And it also, according to Pradumna, told me once, he said, Siddhanta means you should know exactly what it is and also what it isn't. Siddhanta Balaya Chitanakar Alash. And he said, don't be lazy then in discussing controversial topics, because he said, if the more clear you become about your object of worship, Siddhanta Bodhicitta Iha Hwete Krishna Loki Sudrid Manash. And you can understand why you should put your attention fully on Krishna from getting to Siddhanta. Then Sudrid Manash means then your mind becomes very determined in the practice of devotional service. So, as far as hearing goes, it can be a little tedious, but even if you pick up 1 point, 2 points, or even if you have the sense of, this is well supported even though I don't understand all the nuances, it can be very helpful. As far as people in general, as Prabhupada writes in the 13th chapter of the Gita, in the purport, he said, in Kali Yuga, actually people have no philosophy at all. They have little fragments of things, sound bites they hear and there. It's getting worse because everything's given in reels. And as far as I can tell, a reel is about 5 seconds. That's what people can take in. And so, elaborate philosophy may not be for them. But we could also understand there's a very practical aspect to the Krishna consciousness movement, and that's the mercy of Lord Nityananda. And I'll say what I mean by giving an anecdote. Several years ago on our yatra, when we went to Navadvip Dham, we went to see Dhameshwara Mahaprabhu. And we were there, about 100 devotees sitting in that area just adjacent to Dhameshwara Mahaprabhu, who's there giving his blessings to everybody. And we were chanting Hare Krishna. And somehow or other, some Mayavadis were there. They had taken an interest in us and they followed us in. And there were 5 or 7 of them, I don't remember, but they were noticeable because they had that really dark reddish cloth. And as we gave Krishna Katha and we chanted Hare Krishna, they remained stoic, almost seemingly cynical, although that may have been a projection, but definitely stoic. And then at the end, as we usually do there, we sang this song, Doyal Nitai Chaitanya Bole, Nachara Raman. And the crowd got rocking, all the devotees get into that song. And I looked up, and the Mayavadis were dancing and smiling, and I thought, that's the purport of the song. Even if one is completely covered by the mercy of Lord Nityananda, he doesn't consider any offense, he just lifts people up. And I thought, okay, we don't know philosophy if your mind gets pained by all the twists and turns. Some people doesn't, but I know some brainy people have been in the movement and they can absorb themselves in the tedium of learning Sanskrit and all the nuances and everything like that. It never gets old for them. But for people like me, the mercy of Lord Nityananda becomes so apparent. Prasadam distribution, then chanting the holy names, and then you see the transformation takes place. And even if they are Mayavadis, you can say, okay, that's the other side of the Krishna consciousness movement. How else? If everyone has to understand philosophy, which they can't do anyway, then we're not going to get anywhere. But if there's direct access to people by chanting Lord Nityananda and Lord Chaitanya's name, and all of a sudden they just get in ecstasy, and from doing that, they also overcome their ignorance, then we've got a pretty good deal going, because that could be done anywhere and everywhere. So that was Prabhupada's mood. He presented all the philosophy, but he also just said, just hold festivals and let people come and take prasadam and chant Hare Krishna for the masses. And lo and behold, great souls come out of that mix of the festivals when people are chanting Hare Krishna. Thanks for the question. Okay, there's another hand way back there. Oh, right there, yeah, Prabhu, go ahead, and then Nana Chintani, I think. I can't tell from the distance.
So Maharaj, I was thinking yesterday we were talking about the Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya being the head priest, and a doubt came in my mind is like how do they do deity worship? And Prabhupada mentioned in one of the purports that the Mayavadi philosophers consider deity worship in devotional service to be Pratibindava, or the worship of a form that is a reflection of a false material form. So that answered my question there. So and then I have a question actually. There's one of the purports, Srila Prabhupada says that one should always remember that all Vedic literatures are self-evident. No one is allowed to interpret the Vedic verses. If one does so, he indulges in imagination, and that has no value. So I was looking into self-evident, and it says does not need to be explained. But I was thinking that we do need the purports, we do need the commentary of all the acharyas to understand. If someone just handed over the verses to us, it's hard to understand. So what does Prabhupada mean by one should always remember all the Vedic literature as self-evident?
Self-evident means axiomatic. Every knowledge system requires axiomatic statements. Otherwise you can't go anywhere. Axiomatic means they don't require investigation. They're just accepted. And if you don't have that, as Aristotle said, you get infinite regress. You can't go anywhere. It's like troops keep retreating and retreating and retreating, and they never stand and fight. And Hridayānanda Mahārāja once gave the example of this, that someone says, what temperature does water boil? 200 degrees, or whatever it is. I said, prove it. So then you get water and you boil it, put a thermometer in, and then it says 200, and when it starts to boil, you say, there, it's proved. And he says, wait a minute, prove that's a real thermometer. So then you go get a thermometer testing kit, whatever that is, and you test it, and you say, okay, it's real. And then you go, proves that that's a real thermometer testing kit. And in that way, you keep going back and back and back. There has to be a point at which you have an axiom where this is the source of, this is a self-revealing. It reveals, it proves itself. You don't have to investigate it. So every system has that. And in our system of epistemology, the Vedas are apaurushaya. They're not from a human source. They come directly from the divine. In fact, they're co-eternal with Krishna. And they prove themselves. And of course, Prabhupada goes into some detail in this in the beginning of the Sri Upanishad in this lecture in Albert Hall. He gave this as a preface to say how to understand this philosophy that he gave the points that Jiva Goswami does in the Tattva Sandarbha about how we can't take knowledge through our senses because our senses are imperfect. And then we also have other faults in ways we interpret the world. We say through deduction that there's smoke there on the hill. We heard that one earlier, and then someone said, okay, that means there's fire, but the fire could have gone out yesterday and the smoke somehow was lingering there, and so there's not fire. So that doesn't work either. And he leads us to clarity of Shabda Praman, which means that there is a perfect eyewitness who can give us a clear knowledge, and that's, he shows in our knowledge system, is the only way to get transcendental knowledge is to take the eyewitness report of somebody who's in the spiritual world. That's Krishna. And so that's what it means, that it's, what was the term you used? Self-evident. Self-evident, yes, self-evident, proves itself. The sun is self-evident. When the sun comes up, you don't have to prove it. Okay? Oh, yes.
Maharaj, I have a question.
Okay.
And you have one more thing.
Right.
So I was just one reflection. I was just appreciating the Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's graceful and respectful. And you also mentioned that if someone offers
Oh, I couldn't hear.
Hare Krishna.
Yeah, okay, that's better.
Okay. Yeah, Maharaj, I have a question, and then there's more online as well.
Okay.
But also a reflection. So, I was just appreciating Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's nature and his being so graceful and humble in his interactions with Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, and also the point that you made about on Ekadashi if someone offers prasad, which is non-Ekadashi, that are you able to hear, Maharaj?
Yes, I can hear. I was just trying to get the picture down. Thank you.
That it's important to balance following Ekadashi. It's important to balance that with being graceful and not just be careful to not hurt the other person. And I'm just noticing that in the advanced stages, it's important to be the quality of being graceful and gentle is being emphasized. And the question was that when devotees at the start of the name, for example, of Prabhupada, there's his divine grace and there's his grace or her grace, is that referring to that kind of being graceful, or what does that refer to?
Yeah, well, I like that. That sounds good. It's an honorific for sure, and Prabhupada would attach those honorifics even to new people. Sometimes there will be a new person and you call him Shriman or Srimati. Like Shriman George Harrison. It's a graceful way of interacting with the world, enlightened way of honoring the living beings, according to Shastra, because as it says in the Upadeshamrita, in the 5th verse. How's it start? Huh? No. Krishneti yasya kiritam manasadre dikshasti che pranati bhishta bhajantam nisham shushushaya bhajanam vignamananya indari shunya hridamipsita sangalavya, etc. No, etc. That's the end of the verse. But what it means is that one should be graceful towards different types of living beings or towards different devotees. That's what it's saying. You should be graceful to anybody who says Hare Krishna. You should appreciate that person as the best among the greater crowd in the world, that they're exceptional based on Shastra. And if somebody took initiation, you should take the time, go out of your way to be demonstrative about how much you appreciate them. I mean, not many people do it in the West. You don't see people, except in front of our house, when our neighbors watch, devotees come and bow down on the sidewalk. But you don't see it downtown Burlingame or anywhere else. People bowing down, putting their head on the ground. That's demonstrative that this person is special. And then for those who are venerable in the process, then he says, you should really go out of your way. So yeah, all those are indication of the culture of being graceful and accepting grace. And yeah, you can consider it like that.
Thank you, Maharaj. I have one more question. That in the verse that described that Buddhists are maybe better than the Mayavadis, because the Mayavadis are in so-called knowledge, and there is a parallel drawn with Axiomatic verse. I was wondering, in Bhagavad Gita, there are 4 kinds of people who don't surrender to Krishna. One of them is Maya, Bhagavad, those whose knowledge is being stolen by Maya. Is that also referring to the same category?
Yes. I mean, considering the statement about Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya when he was in his Mayavadi phase, and he read so many books on logic, but then he missed the whole point. And that's the idea of Maya Prutta Jnana. You're so smart, but you missed the whole point. And so that happens when one doesn't have association with pure devotees. And Prabhupada mentioned that. You can't come to the conclusion that God's a person unless you're able to serve a pure devotee. That's not the conclusion your mind comes to, especially if it's materially contaminated, that God is the Supreme Personality of God who plays a flute.
There's some online comments.
Okay.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Even though there were network problems and power off being happening, we still have 20 people tuned in online.
There you go.
And I have some reflections from them. One is from Charasmita. She says, Hare Krishna, pronounced from east of Kailash, New Delhi, India. And there is a question from Preeti from Mataji. Her question is, do Mayavadis see Lord Krishna and demigods as same? How do impersonalists see the difference between Lord Krishna and demigods, as they don't deny the existence of God like Mayavadis?
I think it was a Chaitanya Prabhu yesterday gave some formula. They see categorically the same in a way that they're all manifestations of Maya, but then there may be a hierarchy within them, that some are in the mode of ignorance, some are in the mode of passion, some in the mode of goodness. But categorically, yes, they see them as the same in the sense that they're all products of illusion, because there's form, and there's no form in their ultimate conception.
That's it from my audience.
Okay, thank you very much. Mahendra Prabhu. Somebody cough up the mic. Okay.
Just on the point of why Mayavada, knowing about Mayavada philosophy is relevant or not relevant, Prabhupada mentioned in the beginning of one of the purports that practically all religions, nowadays they have a personal conclusion, which may seem an extreme statement, and many refer God as a person seemingly, but actually if you look deep into their philosophy, they're really impersonal. Even the major religions, some more, some less. So, and then of course atheists, they definitely, whatever their philosophy is, that's impersonal. Basically, that's everybody. So knowing something will be definitely useful in preaching. So you may not be acquainted with or remember these details, the technical stuff, but at least know why God is a person and about his energies. That's really unique in the Gaudiya Vaishnava philosophy. So these basic points, if we understand clearly how the logic goes, then our preaching will be strong.
Thank you, Mahendra Prabhu. Devavrat Prabhu has his hand up.
Yeah.
What happened?
Hare Krishna.
The mic was working fine just a second ago.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Quick, here comes Chucky Bell. See if you can get it to work so we don't disturb it.
I was thinking with Mahendra Prabhu was saying, there's this memory of Sarvabhauma in New York where Prabhupada was practically every day going very strong in Mayavad philosophy, and all the devotees were kind of, what's this just quarrel that Prabhupada has with Mayavad philosophy? And then at one point it dawned upon Sarvabhauma that we were the Mayavadis. So it's important because, the details, as Mahendra Prabhu was saying, we may not be able to comprehend them all because there's a lot of technical language, but the very foundation of why we're existing in the material world is due to some tinge of Mayavad philosophy, thinking oneself to be supreme. So to be able to deconstruct that according to one's capacity is extremely important for transitioning into a natural condition of life.
Thank you. Personhood in general is a topic that is important because if our origin, of course, the simple logic of our origin is impersonal, how did we become persons? And subtly then, if God's impersonal and we're impersonal, we're better than God. And we're smarter than Him too, which is functional atheism, no matter what anybody says. And so, having at least the clear idea, which is so rare, that God as a person does change our relationship with the world because it belongs to somebody else. Isha Vashamidam Sarvam. The first time I heard it was in an advertisement in the Back to Godhead magazine for the Sri Upanishad. And there was this bold statement that actually the ancient Vedic literatures say that the Supreme God is actually the Supreme Person. And it had a picture of Mahavishnu there. And I can remember the feeling of just sitting there staring at that and thinking, that's the first time I ever heard anybody say anything like that so directly. And I was compelled to want to read the book, and it really changed everything. And it's the point at which most people, it either makes or breaks. Because some people, they want to cross into that region. It seems to them archaic, or we're going back to that idea that God's a person. And then if we don't have an idea of our origin being personal, then who are we? We're just some mental construct. And the personhood of the soul is also lost in that. Because if you lose the sun, you can't see yourself either. Okay, let's take a break. I think we have until, we're going to 11:30, right? Yes?
Yes.
That's the schedule.
We're going until 10:30.
We're fasting until death.
3 to 6:30 in the afternoon.
Okay, we're going today until when?
No.
We quit now?
Yeah. 2.5 hours in the morning.
I thought it
At least
was
that's what we discussed
3
yesterday.
hours.
My understanding is when we spoke yesterday, we wanted to do 2.5 in the morning in order to be considerate of those who are fasting. At least that's what the discussion was. And then we would do 3 hours in the afternoon.
Well, what are we going to do now?
Let's keep going another hour.
Well, let's just go for a few more minutes. And then we'll break. That will make it a compromise. Okay? May we go until 11 o'clock, and then we'll just leave it at that for the morning session. Is that okay, or would you like to break now? If you'd like to, outside people's party, if you want to break now, instead of going to 11, then raise your hand. Everyone's afraid to raise their hand. Okay. Inside, do you want to break now or at 11?
11.
Breaking now means to then go up until 11:30 or just finish?
No, this means ending of the session. Keep going?
Yes.
Okay, well, if you didn't vote, you didn't want to be considered a heretic. So we'll just read a few more verses. We're taking up at 236. After speaking to Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya in this way, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu returned to his residence. From that day on, the Bhattacharya was free because his false pride had been dismantled. From that day on, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya did not know anything but the lotus feet of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and from that day he could explain the revealed scriptures only in accordance with the process of devotional service. Seeing that Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya was firmly fixed in the cult of Vaishnavism, Gopinathacharya, his brother-in-law, began to dance, clap his hands, and chant, Hare! The next day, the Bhattacharya went to visit the temple of Lord Jagannath. But before he reached the temple, he went to see Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. When he met Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the Bhattacharya fell down flat to offer him respects. After offering various prayers to him, he spoke of his previous bad disposition with great humility. Then the Bhattacharya asked Chaitanya Mahaprabhu which item is most important in the execution of devotional service. The Lord replied that the most important item was the chanting of the holy name of the Lord. Purport: there are 9 items to be executed in devotional service. These are enumerated in the following verse from Srimad Bhagavatam 7.5.23. Shravanam kirtanam Vishnu smaranam padasevanam archanam bandhanam dasyam sakyam atma nivedanam. Hearing the glories of the Lord, chanting, remembering, serving the lotus feet of the Lord, offering worship in the temple, offering prayers, becoming a servant of the Lord, becoming the Lord's friend, and Sarvabhauma nirvedana, offering oneself fully at the lotus feet of the Lord. These are the 9 devotional processes. In the Nectar of Devotion, these are expanded into 64 items. When Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya asked the Lord which item was most important, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu immediately answered that the most important item is the chanting of the holy names of the Lord. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. He then quoted the following verse from the Brihad Naradiya Purana, 38th chapter, verse 126, to confirm his statement. Hare Rama, Hare Rama Deva Kevalam, Nasteva Gatiranyata. In this age of quarrel and hypocrisy, the only means of deliverance is the chanting of the holy name of the Lord. There is no other way, there is no other way, there is no other way. Because the people of this age are so fallen, they can simply chant the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. In this way, they can rid themselves of the bodily conception of life and become eligible to engage in the Lord's devotional service. One cannot engage in the devotional service of the Lord without being purified of all contamination. This is confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita. Yesham tandakatam papa jananam punyakarmanam te tvanva mohanirmukta bhajante mam vridavrata. Persons who have acted piously in previous lives and in this life, and whose sinful actions are completely eradicated, are freed from the dualities of delusion, and they engage themselves in my service with determination. Sometimes people are surprised to see young men and women take so seriously to the Krishna consciousness movement. By giving up sinful activity, illicit sex, meat eating, intoxication, and gambling, and strictly following the injunctions given by the spiritual master, they have become purified of all contamination. They can therefore fully engage in the devotional service of the Lord. In the age of Kali, Harinam, Hari Kirtan is very, very important. The importance of chanting the holy name of the Lord is stated in the following verses from Srimad Bhagavatam 12.3.51 through 52. Kale dosha nidhe rajan asti eko mahanguna kirtana deva krishnasya upasanga param praje kriteya dhyato vishnu tritayam yajato makane vapare paricharyayam kalotantari kirtana. The most important factor in this age of Kali, which is an ocean of faults, is that one can be free from all contamination and become eligible to enter the kingdom of God simply by chanting the Hare Krishna mantra. The self-realization that was achieved in the Satya millennium by meditation, in the Treta millennium by the performance of different sacrifices, and in the Dwapara millennium by worship of Lord Krishna, can be achieved in the age of Kali simply by chanting the holy name Hare Krishna. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu very elaborately explained the Hare Nama verse of the Brihadaranyaka Purana, and Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya was struck with wonder to hear his explanation. Gopinathacharya reminded Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, "My dear Bhattacharya, what I foretold to you has now taken place." Purport: previously, Gopinathacharya had informed Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya that when he would be blessed by the Lord, he would thoroughly understand the transcendental process of devotional service. This prediction was now fulfilled. The Bhattacharya was fully converted to the cult of Vaishnavism, and he was following the principles automatically without being pressured. In the Bhagavad Gita 240, it is said, "Svolpam apyasya dharmasya trayate mahato bhayat." Simply by performing a little devotional service, one can escape the greatest danger. Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya had been in the greatest danger because he had adhered to Mayavad philosophy. Somehow or other, he came into contact with Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and became a perfect devotee. In this way, he was saved from the great fall down of impersonalism. Offering his obeisances to Gopinathacharya, the Bhattacharya said, "Because I am related to you and you are a devotee, by your mercy the Lord has shown mercy to me. You are a first-class devotee, whereas I am in the darkness of logical arguments. Because of your relationship with the Lord has bestowed his benediction upon me." Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was very pleased with this humble statement. After embracing the Bhattacharya, he said, "Now go see Lord Jagannath in the temple." After visiting the temple of Lord Jagannath, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya returned home with Jagannananda and Damodar. The Bhattacharya brought large quantities of excellent food, remnants blessed by Lord Jagannath. All this prasad was given to his own Brahmana servant, along with Jagannananda and Damodar. Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya then composed 2 verses on the leaf of a palm tree. Giving the palm leaf to Jagannananda Prabhu, the Bhattacharya requested him to deliver it to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Sometimes people transpose this because earlier he had composed 100 verses. And sometimes people say, "Oh, it was 2 out of those," but actually these are 2 separate verses that he composed. Jagannananda and Damodar then returned to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, bringing him both the prasadam and the palm leaf on which the verses were composed. But Mukunda Datta took the palm leaf from the hands of Jagannananda before he could deliver it to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Mukunda Datta then copied the 2 verses on the wall outside the room. After this, Jagannananda took the palm leaf from Mukunda Datta and delivered it to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. As soon as Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu read the 2 verses, he immediately tore up the palm leaf. However, all the devotees read these verses on the outside wall, and they all kept them within their hearts. The verses are as follows. Vairagya Vidya Nija Bhakti Yoga Shikshartameka Purusha Purana Shri Krishna Chaitanya Shariradhari Kripam Buddhiryastamaham Prapadye. Let me take shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, who has descended in the form of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to teach us real knowledge. His devotional service and detachment from whatever does not foster Krishna consciousness. He has descended because he is an ocean of transcendental mercy. Let me surrender unto his lotus feet. Purport: this verse and the following verse are included in the Chaitanya Chandrodaya Nataka by Sri Kavi Kanapur. Kalan nashtam bhakti yogam nijam ya pradushkartam Krishna Chaitanya nama avirabhutastasya padara vinde gadam gadam liyatam chitta brinda. Let my consciousness, which is like a bumblebee, take shelter of the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who has just now appeared as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to teach the ancient system of devotional service to himself. This system had almost been lost due to the influence of time. Purport: as Lord Krishna states in Bhagavad Gita 4.7, Yada yada hi dharmasya gladir bhavati bharata abhutanam adharmasya tadadmanam sujamyana. Whenever and wherever there is a decline in religious practice, O descendant of Bharat, and a predominant rise of your religion, at that time I descend myself. This is also the case with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's appearance. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appeared in this world as a disguised incarnation of Krishna, but his appearance is confirmed in Srimad Bhagavatam, the Mahabharata, and other Vedic scriptures. He appeared in order to teach the fallen souls in the material world. For in this age of Kali, almost everyone has become attached to fruitive and ritualistic activities and mental speculation. Consequently, there was a great need to revive the system of devotional service. The Lord himself personally came down disguised as a devotee, so that the fallen populace might take advantage of the Lord's example. At the conclusion of the Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna advised complete surrender unto him, promising all protection to his devotee. Unfortunately, people are so fallen that they cannot accept the instructions of Lord Krishna. Therefore, Krishna returned with the same mission, but he executed it in a different way. As Lord Sri Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he ordered us to surrender unto himself. But as Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he taught us how to surrender to Krishna. Therefore, he is praised by the Goswamis. Namo Mahavaranyaya Krishna Prema Hridayate. Lord Sri Krishna is certainly the personality of Godhead, but he is not as magnanimous as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Lord Krishna simply gave orders for one to become his devotee, Manmana Bhavaman Bhakta. But Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu actually taught the process of Krishna consciousness. If one wants to become a devotee of Lord Krishna, he must first take shelter at the lotus feet of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, following the footsteps of Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya and other exalted devotees. These two verses composed by Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya will always declare his name and fame as loudly as a pounding drum, for they have become pearl necklaces around the necks of all devotees. Indeed, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya became an unalloyed devotee of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He did not know anything but the service of the Lord. The Bhattacharya always chanted the holy name of Sri Krishna Chaitanya, son of Mother Shachi, and reservoir of all good qualities. Indeed, chanting the holy names became his meditation. One day, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya came before Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and, after offering obeisances, began to recite a verse. He began to quote one of the Lord Brahma's prayers from Srimad Bhagavatam, but he changed 2 syllables at the end of the verse. The Bhattacharya recited, "One who seeks your compassion and thus tolerates all kinds of adverse conditions due to the karma of his past deeds, who engages always in your devotional service with his mind, words, and body, and who always offers obeisances unto you, is certainly a bona fide candidate for becoming your unalloyed devotee." When reciting this verse from the Srimad Bhagavatam 10.14a, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya changed the original reading from Mukti Pade to Bhakti Pade. Mukti means liberation and merging into the impersonal Brahman effulgence. Bhakti means rendering transcendental service unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Because of having developed pure devotional service, the Bhattacharya did not like the word Mukti Pade, which refers to the impersonal Brahman feature of the Lord. However, he was not authorized to change a word in Srimad Bhagavatam, as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu will explain. Although the Bhattacharya changed the word in his devotional ecstasy, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu did not approve of it. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu immediately pointed out, in that verse the word is Mukti Pade, but you have changed it to Bhakti Pade. What is your intention? Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya replied, the awakening of pure love of Godhead, which is the result of devotional service, far surpasses liberation from material bondage. For those averse to devotional service, merging into that Brahman effulgence is a kind of punishment. In the Brahmanda Purana it is said, Siddha lokas tu tamasa pare yatra basantihi, Siddha Brahma sukhe bhagna Daikyascha harina hata. In Siddhaloka, There live two kinds of living entities. Those who are killed by the Supreme Personality of Godhead due to their having been demons in their previous lives, and those who are very fond of enjoying the impersonal effulgence of the Lord. The word tamasa means the coverings of the universe. Layers of material elements cover the universe, and outside these coverings is the impersonal Brahman effulgence. If one is destined to remain in the Lord's impersonal effulgence, he misses the opportunity to render service to the personality of Godhead. Therefore, devotees consider remaining in the impersonal Brahman effulgence a kind of punishment. Sometimes devotees think of merging into the Brahman effulgence, and consequently they are promoted to Siddhaloka. Because of their impersonal understanding, they are actually punished. Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya continues to explain the distinction between Muktipada and Bhaktipada in the following verse. The Bhattacharya continued, the impersonalists who do not accept the transcendental form of Lord Sri Krishna, and the demons who are always engaged in blaspheming and fighting with him, are punished by being merged into the Brahman effulgence. But that does not happen to the person engaged in the devotional service of the Lord. There are 5 kinds of liberation: Salokya, Savipya, Sarupya, Sarshti, and Sayuja. Salokya means that after material liberation, one is promoted to the planet where the Supreme Personality of Godhead resides. Samipya means remaining an associate of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Sarupya means attaining a 4-handed form exactly like that of the Lord. Sarshti means attaining opulences like those of the Supreme Lord. And Sayuja means merging into the Brahman effulgence of the Lord. These are the 5 types of liberation. If there is a chance to serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead, a pure devotee sometimes accepts Salokya, Sarupya, Samipya, or Sarshti forms of liberation, but never Sayuja. A pure devotee does not like even to hear about Sayuja Mukti, which inspires him with fear and hatred. Indeed, the pure devotee would rather go to hell than merge into the Lord's effulgence, the effulgence of the Lord. Srila Prabodhananda Saraswati has sung Kaivalyam Narakayate. The impersonalist conception of becoming one with the effulgence of the Lord is exactly like hell. Therefore, of the 5 types of liberation, the first, Salokya, first 4, Samipya, Sarupya, and Sarshti, are not so undesirable because they can be avenues of service to the Lord. Nonetheless, a pure devotee of the Lord rejects even these types of liberation. He aspires only to serve Krishna birth after birth. He is not very interested in stopping the repetition of birth, for he simply desires to serve the Lord even in hellish circumstances. Consequently, the pure devotee hates and fears Sayuja Mukti, merging into the effulgence of the Lord. This merging is due to an offense committed against the transcendental living service of the Lord, and therefore is not at all desirable for a pure devotee. What time is it?
10:55.
Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya continued, there are 2 kinds of Sayuja Mukti, merging into the Brahman effulgence and merging into the personal body of the Lord. Merging into the Lord's body is even more abominable than merging into his effulgence. According to the opinion of the Mayavadi Vedantas, the living entity's ultimate success is to merge into the impersonal Brahman. The impersonal Brahman or bodily effulgence of the Supreme Lord is known as Brahmalok or Siddhalok. According to the Brahma Samhita 540, Yasya Prabha, Prabhavato Jagananda Koki, the material universes are generated from the bodily rays of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Yogis who follow the principles of Patanjali accept the personality of the Absolute Truth, but they want to merge into the transcendental body of the Supreme Lord. That is their desire. Being the greatest authority, the Supreme Lord can easily allow many millions of living entities to merge into his body. The origin of everything is the Supreme Personality of God in Bhagavan, and his bodily effulgence is known as the Brahmajyoti, Brahmaloka or Siddhaloka. Thus, Brahmaloka or Siddhaloka is a place where many spark-like living entities, parts and parcels of the Supreme Lord, are assembled. Because these living entities do not wish to keep their individual existences, they are combined and allowed to remain in Brahmaloka like so many atomic sparks of sunshine emanating from the sun. The word Siddha is very significant. Siddha refers to one who has realized the Brahman effulgence and one who has complete knowledge that the living entity is not a material atom, but a spiritual spark. This understanding is described in the Bhagavad Gita as Brahma Bhuta. That's a nice correlation or juxtaposition of not a material atom, but a spiritual spark. In the conditioned state, the living entity is known as Jiva Bhuta, or the living force within matter. Brahma Bhuta living entities are allowed to stay in Brahmaloka or Siddhaloka, but unfortunately they sometimes again fall into the material world because they are not engaged in devotional service. This is supported by the verse in Srimad Bhagavatam beginning, Yenaya Vinaksha. These semi-liberated souls falsely claim to be liberated, semi-liberated. But unless one engages in devotional service to the Lord, he is still materially contaminated. Therefore, these living entities have been described as vimuktamaniya, meaning that they falsely consider themselves liberated, although their intelligence is not yet purified. Although these living entities undergo severe austerities to rise to the platform of Siddhaloka, they cannot remain there perpetually, for they are bereft of ananda, bliss. Even though these living entities attain the Brahmabhuta stage and realize the Supreme Personality of Godhead through his bodily effulgence, they nonetheless fall down to neglecting the Lord's service. Due to neglecting the Lord's service, they do not properly utilize whatever little knowledge they have of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, not attaining ananda or bliss. They come down to the material world to enjoy. This is certainly a fall down for one who is actually liberated. The Bhaktas consider such a fall down equal to achieving a place in hell. The followers of the Patanjali Yoga system actually want to merge into the body of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This indicates that they do not want to engage in his service despite their knowledge of him, and thus their position is even more abominable than that of those who want to merge into the Lord's effulgence. These yogis meditate on the four-handed form of the Lord in order to merge into his body. The Patanjali system describes the form of the Lord as klesha karma vipakashayar aparayamishta purusha vishesha ishvara. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is a person who does not partake of a miserable material life. The yogis accept the eternity of the Supreme Person in one of their mantras, Sa Uvesham Api Guru Kalvana Vach Shedat. Such a person is always supreme and is not influenced by the element of time. The followers of the Patanjali system, therefore, accept the eternity of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Yet according to them, Purushartha Shunyanam Pratiprasavaha Kaivalyam Swarupa Pratishtava Chitti Shakti Iti. They believe that in the perfectional stage, the conception of Purusha is vanquished. According to their description, Chitti Shakti Iti, they believe that when one becomes perfect, he cannot remain a person. This yoga system is therefore abominable because its final conception is impersonal. In the beginning, these yogis accept the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but they ultimately give up this idea in order to become impersonal. They are most unfortunate because although they have a personal conception of the Absolute Truth, they neglect to render devotional service to the Lord and thus fall down again into the material world. As mentioned above, This idea is supported by Srimad Bhagavatam 10.2.32, Ariya Krishna Parampadam Tatatyato Nadrata Yushmaram Raya. Due to neglecting the lotus feet of the Lord, these yogis again fall down into the material existence, Patantyada. Consequently, this path of yoga is more abominable than the impersonalist path. This conclusion is also supported by Lord Kapiladev in the following verse from the Srimad Bhagavatam. Salokya Shashti Savibhya Sarupyaikatva Apyuta Diyamanam Nagrinanti Vinamat Sevanam Jana. Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya concluded, even though he is offered all kinds of liberation, the pure devotee does not accept them. He is fully satisfied engaging in the service of the Lord. And that ends our morning session here on Ekadashi with just 1, 2, 3, 4, 8 pages to go with no purpose. But we wouldn't want to finish before for a break. We'll do it afterwards. Right?
Yes.
Okay, thanks for coming. Dear Srila Prabhupada, dear Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Shri Shri Panchatattva, Shri Shri Gauritai, Shri Shri Krishna Balarama, Shri Shri Radhesham. If you so desire, please immerse us in the beautiful personal conception of the Lord, accessed through the chanting of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. Please let us eternally eschew the impersonal process of Mayavad, and please empower us to spread Lord Chaitanya's movement all over the world, to bring light to those who have been lost in the darkness of Mayavad. Thank you for considering our request. Om Tat Sat. Everyone agrees with this prayer here at Govardhana Hill on Ekadashi Day. Please unmute and say Hare Krishna.
Hare
Krishna. Nitai Gaura Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Nitai Gaura Hari Bo, Nitai Gaura Hari Bo, Hari Bo. Kripasanve Vichapatitanam Bhavnibhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Well, lunch is scheduled for 12 o'clock. We make no guarantees. Thank you very much, everyone. See you back here at 3 o'clock. 3 o'clock. We'll see you at 3 o'clock. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Yes, here, make an announcement. We have one very important announcement. It will take 22 seconds.
Hare Krishna devotees. So as you know, the team here worked extremely hard, specifically in the last year they worked specifically hard in order for us to have the readings here by making sure the temple was finished. And we want to make sure it doesn't go unnoticed. So one of the ways we reciprocate every year is by giving a donation. I see Krishna Maharaj will never ask for it, and some years he got to the point where we had to ask him. But anyone who's staying in the ashram, it's $10 a day. Anyone who's staying in the guest house, it's $20 a day. And anyone who's taking prasadam, 60 rupees for breakfast, 80 rupees for lunch. And any contribution you want to make beyond that is deeply valued by the team of the readings and also the ashram itself. It allows us to continue to come here and genuinely express our gratitude for the facility which they provide, because it's not like they have to have us here, but out of their kindness they allow us to. So this is a small way we can reciprocate with them.
We use huge amounts of electricity, consume alu gobi in the truckloads and so forth, and it takes a lot of extra work for all the devotees. In any case, it's one of the rarest opportunities on the planet to be able to come to this ashram. It's the aesthetic of it is amazing, and the situation right at the foot of Govardhana Hill. And so, just consider that a lot of other people have been asking, like, how come only these guys get to come here during Kartik? And the only way to, well, not the only way, one of the main ways is to make sure we reciprocate as much as possible.
So anyone who wants to give their donation, they can give it to me. I keep a ledger of what we're giving to the ashram every year. And anyone who wants to give online, that's completely fine. There are QR codes posted on the walls in most of the major communal areas. If you do that, I just request that you send a picture of what has been given to myself, because I share all of that directly with the Sri Krishna Mission.
Because he doesn't really count out, even if you hand him a huge stack of cash, he doesn't count it. He just puts it aside like it didn't even come in. So it's really important to keep track of everything. Thank you everyone for your consideration. Hare Krishna. 3 o'clock.